Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, wherever you're at around the world. Aloha. Welcome back to another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Today, as you can see, we're doing a live stream, and it's a very special live stream. I'm not going to delay. I just want to talk to this guy as quickly as we can. Today, we have journalist from the Debrief.org, MJ Banias. Sir, how are you?
I'm terrific. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. As I said before we even went live, thank you so damn much for doing this. We had never met before. I told him, I wrote him a message on Facebook saying, "Hey, I'm throwing a Christmas Hail Mary here, and I'm going to see if I could get you on the show." And you replied, something to the effect of, "Yeah, Christmas miracles do exist." And so you came on the show, and here we are, man. So thank you.
Oh, listen, you're welcome. I'm happy to do it. I know what it's like to try and do a live show where no one's heard of you and starting, from scratch. And, it was always the people who would say, yeah, you know what, I'll do it. And hopefully it helps grow your numbers or subscribers or whatever. Not that I'm really that famous at all, but I'm happy to do it. And yeah, like Christmas miracles are real. So
yes.
let's just talk it up to that.
All right. So I'm sure there's nobody in this chat right now. There's 4 people in the chat, excuse me. But I would think at least the people watching the chat have a familiarity about who you are and what you do. But for the people who may watch down the road or just have no clue who I'm talking to, which is crazy to think, considering there's 1 trillion people on the planet. But can you give us a short review of your expertise and sort of what you do?
Sure. I'm not sure if expertise is the right word, but okay. We'll start where listen, I'm just a guy who likes UFOs. No, I began about 7 or 8 years ago as just sort of wanted to study the UFO subculture as a group. I found sort of the idea interesting. A friend of mine sort of pushed me into it. And I began just doing what everyone does when they get into UFOs. And I sort of embedded myself in the culture. I started reading books about it. I started interviewing people who had experiences. I even joined MUFON and became a field investigator for 2 years, doing UFO investigations. And it sort of all culminated into a book that I wrote called The UFO People, A Curious Culture. It's really just sort of my foray into the UFO community. And it's a sort of, I guess you could say, cultural studies text or philosophical look at what it means to be a sort of a UFO person or a member of the UFO community. And after that, I really kind of just fell in love with the people and fell in love with sort of the ideas, and it led to a career with Vice and Popular Mechanics. It led to some media stuff. It allowed me to write in exchange for money, which was like, what? People could do that in real life. And here we are today. I'm a journalist now. I recently started a brand new media site, a news site about divergent technology and emerging science and disruptive sort of ideas. And it's called the Debrief.org. And it was myself, Tim McMillan, and Micah Hanks who sort of had this idea, and it sort of launched about a month ago, a little less, and it's been doing really well. We've gotten a lot of traffic. In fact, in our first few days, the website broke because of traffic just overwhelming it. But now we're kind of up and running, and it's just kind of chugging along, and releasing content every day, and writing for a living, which is kind of a cool thing to be doing, or at least trying to make a living writing. But
you guys are doing so well that, if I'm not mistaken, you were also hiring, right? You're looking for more writers.
Well, yeah, unfortunately we haven't. If you can see the website there, we have no ads, so we have not monetized the site yet. And I think the idea is just we want to build a following first. With every startup, you want to make sure you have an audience, and we do, which is really nice. Our website's doing really well in the first month, so we're happy. And the sort of next step now is to start trying to find money. So if you're watching and you want to invest, or you have a lot of money and you want to own a media company, let us know. I'm just joking. That's not how it works. But yeah, we're looking for ads and sponsorship and all that stuff now. So that's our kind of January plan, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, in this field and really in any media nowadays, it's really tough to build a model where you're either not asking for people for money or you're not just straight up charging people money to get access to your information. And for me, look, I understand you have to do one or the other, and I'm sure the Debrief at some point is going to adopt one of these models. I do appreciate when the information is free and the ability to donate is constantly sort of pushed. Like I'm a salesman, so I'm always just like, I'm going to, at least one of the goals for the channel was to never put anything behind a paywall. And don't take it the wrong way if you do, and if you don't, cool. Eventually, hopefully one day, there'll be a point where I could say, hey, look, I've got a Patreon, or in the YouTube chat, you guys want to donate, go for it. But to put, I think at least, especially this information, if you're one of these people, and I'm not saying you are or the Debrief is, but if you're one of these folks out there saying this is life-changing information, if this gets out, it's game over for the military or disclosure. And it's like, okay, well, if there's underground bases in Antarctica, wouldn't you want the world to know? Why would you put that behind a paywall?
Well, I mean, you're just making it up, so
right.
I don't know.
Right.
We don't really have, I think, at this point, to sort of, I don't think we're at the stage where we want to have subscribers or anything like that. Like, I'm not sure if we're at the point where there's a paywall. I mean, I don't know. Realistically, I'm not really the business end of this either. And what we've done is we've really delineated our lines and lanes in this business. So I'm lucky that I can just kind of do my thing, which is focus on content and editorial, getting those articles out and editing them and sort of pushing them out to the public. How the rest of that occurs, on the business front, I can be like, I don't know, man, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm really lucky in that regard. I think, at times I have sort of the easiest job of the team. And sometimes I think I have like the toughest job. So it's kind of this give and take. But one thing I love is the three of us, actually the four of us, because Steve's our IT guy. The four of us like mesh so well, and we just have this perfect kind of relationship because we're all buddies. So we kind of know everyone's temperament and how everyone works. And it's been a fairly peaceful month so far. I'm sure it'll explode in some horrible.
Well, all great bands.
At this point, we're doing good.
Okay. Well, I guess, it made me think of a question based off of that. But before I ask you that question, and it's just based off of your job at the Debrief. But when you were going to college and you were studying, did you study journalism?
No, I am an English major with minors in history and philosophy. I also have an education degree, so I teach as well.
Okay. And when you came out of college, how did you end up writing for popular mechanics? How did you stumble into it? What was the first article you wrote, or the first thing you did that had to do with this weird topic?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I've been writing for a long time. I started a blog very early on when I first got into the whole UFO subculture. Again, it was sort of it first all began as a sort of an academic study. Like I was just wanting to write a book about the UFO subculture as a sort of a cultural study text. And it sort of forced me to start writing my thoughts down somewhere because it's so complex. Like for somebody who kind of walks into ufology or the UFO community for the first time, they don't know anything about it. There is a whole kind of history and I don't know, sort of a framework that exists out there. And what happens is you start getting lost, you start going down different rabbit holes and getting kind of sucked into these different areas. And
I feel it's almost like a curriculum with no professor.
Yeah, it's such a great way of looking at it because there's no ivory tower of ufology, right? Like nobody owns the discourse of ufology. It's just this kind of massive garage sale of ideas. But so I started writing them down. I started a blog called Terra Obscura. It's still up, though it hasn't been written in for a long time. But if you want to go to terraobscura.net, you can find all my old sort of philosophical meandering about the UFO community. But that's what led to the book. And then after the book was published, I started writing for Mysterious Universe, or sorry, a little bit actually before I started writing for Mysterious Universe, which was it's a fairly popular sort of alternative kind of paranormal news site. So it focuses mainly on like weird news and paranormal news and stuff like that. Yeah, I had a really great time writing with those guys. And it really let me sort of cut my teeth on sort of easy, sort of tame journalism that was just about really weird stuff, like people getting into horrible car accidents, not dying somehow, and that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
But it was a lot of fun, and that led to a couple articles in Fate magazine, in 14 Times, and eventually the book. And then I pitched Vice and said, "Hey, I want to write this article about UFOs," and the editor said, "Sounds terrible. I don't want it, but can you write this instead about UFOs?" And so he reverse pitched me off my pitch, basically saying, "Your pitch is terrible, but can you write this?" So I did, and I guess he was impressed enough that he said, "Well, here, you know what? Pitch me something else." And so I pitched him something else, and he bought it, and then it led to another article, and then it led to sort of more articles, and eventually I pitched other places like Popular Mechanics, and in Canada, the Globe and Mail, which is sort of a large newspaper here.
Okay.
So I sort of pitched, and it led to a whole bunch of stories. I think I've probably got 40 or 50 stories with Vice,
Yeah.
a couple of Popular Mechanics, and that led to other stuff. It led to a TV show. It led to some consulting work for a couple of like Vice Productions, which is really sweet, as well as a History Channel show that's coming out in January. So it's like exploded into this sort of weird side hustle.
Yeah.
I love every second of it. So
Good. Yeah, I mean, well, you can tell just in the writing and the passion of everything you guys are doing over there. So you're the editor in chief at the debrief.org. Could you? So, I'm not versed in the sort of the hierarchy of what a press room looks like.
Sure.
But in my brain, I think editor in chief. I think of Superman. I think of, okay, these are the stories that are going out.
That's literally what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so you have to read everything that is published on the website, essentially.
Most of it. Yeah. Once in a while, because Tim and Micah are also owners, sometimes they'll try and sneak one past me. So, they're notorious. No, so generally, yeah, I'm going to say 95% of the stuff I've read on that website, I've read through and edited at least in some fashion. But it's like I said, it's when you're in sort of startup mode, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff. So it's outside of that, it's having meetings with writers, it's having meetings with potentially sort of investors or contacts or sources or whatever. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff, but yeah, generally I'm just sort of responsible for the editorial content that comes out. So I guess the buck stops with me, even though I hate that, because you never know, somebody might find something wrong and then they're going to blame me for it, and then I have to go fix it, and it's like, ugh.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess the hottest thing, the first thing you guys really wrote about, and I guess since in less than a month, I'm assuming you guys put somewhere around 20 articles. Is that fair to say?
Oh, we probably have more than 20 right now, because my brain is mush. We have a lot. Yeah, there's been some days where we've dropped 4 articles a day. We try to drop minimum one a day. Again, it's just the 3 of us, and we have a team of writers who are volunteers, bless their hearts. But we're in this sort of, I think, path to try and release a couple pieces a day, sort of trying to keep up with other publications our size. Yeah. So who knows? I don't know. I could do a count, but it would be a waste of time.
But I mean, you guys are putting up a ton of content, is my point.
Yeah.
So when a story like this comes out, where you've got these 2 reports that are floating around the Senate Intelligence Committee, and a picture leaks from one of these reports, which in my brain tells me that pretty much confirms that the other report is there, at the very least, it exists. And I know this question has been asked before, and I've asked it of, was it Micah Hanks who wrote the story?
Oh no, Tim McMillan.
Tim McMillan. I don't know why I said Micah Hanks. I asked this on Alejandro Rojas's show, and it was like, well, did you get eyes on this report, Tim? And he couldn't confirm it, right? He couldn't say, yeah, I had eyes on a report. I looked at it, but this report to me, or these two reports, are sort of the cornerstone of this story. So in my eyes, or in my brain, I'm looking at the editor-in-chief, and I'm going, okay, well, does the editor-in-chief approve a story like this without seeing those reports, or at least getting a confirmation that they're real? And how does that work? Am I crossing the line asking that question?
No. So in typically, so when it comes, here's the thing. Defense reporting is a lot different than, I think, science and tech reporting or any other sort of typical reporting, because typically your sources in the defense world sort of must remain anonymous, because ultimately, if they don't, and somebody finds out who they are, especially if they're kind of talking about material that is either classified or at least sort of designed to remain kind of inside certain circles, could lead to a lot of trouble. On the most kind of minimal end, they're sort of dubbed a sort of a media whore, quote unquote, and nobody will ever talk to them sort of anything privately ever again. Like they've sort of blown their reputation. The worst case scenario, you share something classified, you're charged with espionage, you're Edward Snowden, and you're hiding in Moscow.
Right.
So it kind of runs the gamut. So when it comes to dealing with reports, let's say that are, and I'm speaking hypothetically here, because I'm trying to dodge your question.
Right.
When it comes to reports that are classified or at least sensitive enough that they're not supposed to be shared with the public, or they're not cleared for public release, we need to just, as a magazine, and my job is to sort of vet the sources. So I know exactly who the sources are in the article. I know exactly who sort of the debrief spoke to, and their positions and their roles in government and or in the military or in the intelligence world. So I know the game board, right? Because ultimately, when somebody comes out and says, we have these reports that contain classified material, we need to at least ensure that the people that have talked about those reports would know those reports are real and have seen them. But we've verified with a lot of individuals within the Department of Defense that those reports exist. So that's sort of where I have to sort of, that's where I'm good now. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. So then I guess another question I would have, can you give me the details of how big are these reports? Like how much information is in these? Is it, like a thick file? Is it a couple of pages? Is it?
Yeah, they're summaries. So the first report is predominantly a sort of a general, let's say, overview of sort of the the UAP kind of investigatory sort of situation for the last decade or so, regarding the ATIP program and what's going on now with the task force and sort of where they're at, and it includes sort of some key cases, some sort of important information in regards to some of those key cases, as well as some photographs and sort of other specific information. The second report is a little more specific. It dives into some more sort of specific events that are more recent, sort of post 2015. It has a little more information about photographs that have been taken. It has more information about sort of specific events, and it sort of talks about the fact that the Navy's interest in the UAP situation is because the vast majority of these events occur around naval aircraft carriers or submarines that are using nuclear power to sort of propel themselves. So there's significant interest from the Navy as to sort of why these objects tend to appear around these particular vehicles or these particular areas where sort of the Navy has sort of a lot of presence, especially with nuclear powered vehicles such as aircraft carriers, submarines, etc. So it sort of focuses more on that, on why the Navy's really involved in this versus, let's say, the Air Force, which is who you'd assume would be sort of investigating UAP. More actively, which I think to a point maybe they are. It's just everyone's heard of the UAP task force because it's been so publicized. Whereas I think that there's actually a lot of kind of organizations, or at least projects, let's say, within the government that are looking at unknown aircraft in American airspace. I think this one's just gotten the most attention because it's connected to sort of tangentially to sort of the ATIP thing, and ATIP's connected to Tom DeLonge, and Tom DeLonge's connected to Alien Pictures. So, I think we're sort of all, it's kind of, the media is kind of merging these lines together a little bit, but that's to long answer to your question.
Yeah. No, it's okay. I'd rather a long answer than either no answer or short answer. But yeah, no, I was just curious because, I mean, look, when this photo, and I don't even know if I can ask you this, if it's a proper question, sure. But, this photo gets leaked.
Yeah.
Is nobody getting in trouble because this is not as sensational as the other one? Like, why? How does this get leaked and nobody get yelled at, or nobody get demoted, or maybe somebody has and we just don't know about it yet?
Yeah. I think this, okay. So this photo we found out had sort of been in the wild. It had been online before. So much like when To the Stars and the New York Times released the footage of the FLIR 1 video, which was the 2004 Nimitz incident Tic Tac video. That video had been out on the internet for a while, a decade. Yeah. So we found out after publishing our piece that this photo was not just in the hands of a few people, but it had been circulated online sort of previously on Twitter and in some sort of small circles. So after we found out that it had been in the wild, we basically contacted our sources and confirmed that the photo was the photo from the report. Our sources were able to confirm that, that's the photo that is included in one of the reports. So we decided to connect the dots for our readers and say, this photo here that has been sort of circulated a bit on the internet is connected to one of the intelligence reports out of the Office of Naval Intelligence. So, we talked about one of the photos and we talked about this photo, and here it is. So we gave sort of the photo we could. Again, because the photo is already sort of in the public domain, as a news agency, it's a lot easier for us to simply go to our sources and say, listen, it's already out there. So there's not much you can kind of do to stop us. Like, we're not sharing classified material now because it's out in the world.
It's already public. Yeah.
It's already public. Other photos, other stuff that's out there, that maybe hasn't been sort of gone wild, sort of circulating around, again, you're sort of limited sometimes as to what you're allowed to do or what you want to do. And there's sort of a whole bunch of other there's a whole bunch of other moves at play, I think, that you need to kind of be cognizant of as a journalistic organization.
Right.
It's never good for someone to just take, like, okay, we got a leak, now we're going to put it all online. Right. Because what happens is you have automatically burned your source. Right. And as journalists, our sources are what matter, right? We need them in order to keep telling these stories. And sometimes it's better to kind of, if you get this sort of collection, sometimes it's better to just be like, okay, we're going to keep this here because we need our source to trust us and maintain that relationship. If we just dump it, let's say, well, then there's going to be problems. And I think,
well, no, that's totally understandable. I completely get that. It's, I guess then, well, do you think the Department of Defense or anybody in one of those agencies is pissed off that this photo was circulating somewhere online and
Sure.
nobody knew about it, and they had to be brought up by you guys, and probably caught them with their pants down. Do you think they're trying to find the person who put that online?
Um, uh, you know, it's tough, and here's why it's tough. We know these reports were shared with a lot of people within sort of various agencies. We know that the NSA and a lot of people at the NSA got this report. We know people at the CIA got this report, or these reports rather. We know people in the Navy, the Air Force, the Army. Like we know, like this thing was shared all over the place. So if suddenly you have, let's say, 2 or 3,000 people who have seen these reports, it's very difficult to track down
Right.
who that was. It's the same thing with the FLIR video in 2007 when that video got, or sorry, in 2007 when that video got
Mhm.
leaked to Above Top Secret. There was like 2,000 people on that ship who would have seen that video and would have potentially had the ability to yank it and then drop it. So is the Navy, for example, going to allocate significant resources to track that person down
Probably not.
for something that really isn't that big of a deal? And
Yeah.
I think that this is the same situation. This photograph doesn't give away any secrets, right? It's not like this photograph is going to suddenly go to the Chinese government and they're like, yeah, we now know everything about this particular
Right.
weapon system
Right.
or whatever's going on. So it's a sort of act of like, is it really worth the time to figure that out? This could have been leaked by a lot of people. So who knows, right?
Yeah. Well, that's it's interesting. I'm just curious to know if because you were speaking about whistleblowers, and it made me think, well, why isn't a person like, for example, Lou Elizondo being charged with espionage or leaking information? I know he had permission from his superiors to
Yep.
to do this article with the New York Times, but my question is why? Like, why would they do that? What's the motivation? Is there a motivation? Is it something, because again, like you said, that video had been out for a decade. Like someone, I feel like could that story have been done as well as it had been without the help of Lou Elizondo? Or was that piece of the puzzle necessary to sort of add the credibility behind what was being said?
Sure. I mean, you'd have to obviously ask Lou Elizondo about this.
Yeah, well, I met him. I've had an interesting conversation with him. I was his waiter one time, and I freaked out. But yeah, go on. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, he's a really nice guy.
he's a really nice guy.
Yeah. I think Lou is a really essential part of the story, because ultimately he was, of all of the potential projects and portfolios and groups that exist within sort of the United States kind of military complex that are looking at unidentified aerial vehicles that make incursions into U.S. airspace. He was the one who went public. He was the one who said, this is a serious topic and I'm quitting my job because it's a serious topic. And I want to kind of push that forward. I remember when I first spoke to him on the phone, I think the first words out of my mouth were like, "Are you insane? Like, what the hell's wrong with you, man?" Because I was like, why would you quit such a well-paying job to
Mhm.
do this? And I think, he sort of said, there's moments where I'm like, I regret it. You know what I mean? There's moments where I would not, do this again if I had the chance. And then there's moments where he's like, you know what? But then, stuff happens or stuff comes out or journalists connect dots and suddenly a little bit more of that puzzle gets sort of put into place and we can see more of the picture. And he's like, I would do it again in a heartbeat, because I believe in this so much. So it's,
Yeah.
it is what it is, but I think he's an essential part of the story, right? Because he,
No, well, without him, it's. I mean,
yeah,
it just doesn't work.
yeah,
But I'm just curious again as to just like why would his superiors let him say this? Why would the Department of Defense? Why would the people at the ATIP above him go, yeah, go for it, Lou, quit your job, walk away from the job we gave you that's great paying, it's got pension, the whole nine yards, and go tell the world about this secret UFO program that we don't want anybody to know about. And I'll get to why I'm asking this question, and I know I already asked the question, and you don't know because you're not Lou Elizondo. But it just strikes me as a little strange. That's all. It's just like, why now?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you have to ask Lou, I guess.
Yeah.
Again, it's so tough to speak for him. I think Lou's he's been very cautious. He's not divulged anything classified ever. He's never sort of broken his security clearance. Which he still has. So and his sort of life kind of depends on it in a sense, like his career and sort of his professional life depends on sort of him maintaining his security clearance. So he's very cautious. He only talks about what he knows is public and what he knows he's allowed to talk about. So if he was able to cross those T's and dot those I's to ensure that what he was going to kind of come out with was allowed to be released publicly, then good for him. He was able to sort of get that information out and not break the law doing it, right?
Well, let me ask you this hypothetical.
Sure.
Because I told him, because I'm a crazy person, I was like, I think this subject needs a Nelson Mandela. I think it needs an Edward Snowden. I think it needs somebody who's willing to go to prison and lose their pension and really look, if this is the information that you are confessing it is, which is 100% world changing.
Sure.
Okay, this is going to shift a lot of things that we don't even know. We don't know the blowback of information like this if it ever does hit on the level that we all want it to. But this topic is going to need someone like that. And my thing is like, and we've had, like, we could talk, I've already done Roswell and all these other things, but we've had government officials come out and say, yeah, we've recovered alien bodies and we've recovered spacecraft that have crashed. And we've talked about metamaterials and those metamaterials being used in government, CRADA agreements. And they're studying this, that like, this is, I always start the conversation with people who want to have this conversation intelligently. There's something in the sky. The Department of Defense, the Navy, our pilots have seen them, have chased them. We've got them on radar. There's recordings of the cockpit. These things are real. Beyond that, I have no idea what it is. You don't know what it is. Nobody knows what it is. But I feel like this topic needs somebody that is going to really put the pressure on the government to say, because let's just say hypothetically, going back to my hypothetical situation, Lou Elizondo comes out and just starts letting it fly. And I'm not talking about super classified stuff. I'm talking about stuff that has happened on U.S. soil, where the satellite images or the video, it shouldn't really be a national intelligence thing, unless, of course, it's like a top secret plane that it's coming from. If he starts letting information fly, if the government comes and arrests him, for me, that confirms everything he's saying is true, which puts the government in a tough spot because now you're going to have the people demanding, well, why is this guy in prison for saying this crazy stuff? Is it true? Or if it's not true, why are you putting him in prison? It would put a lot of pressure on a lot of lawmakers and a lot of powerful people because now you've got this ticking time bomb that you have in custody, and the second he gets in front of a microphone, he's going to say, yeah, I'm being held against my will, because I'm giving information that I feel is important to humanity. I don't know what the legal argument would be. I don't know what his lawyer's defense would be against something like this. I don't know if they would even have jurisdiction. Would they just throw him in Guantanamo Bay and we never hear from him again? I have no clue. But I mean, what do you think about that hypothetical? Am I a crazy person? Do you think something like that needs to happen? Is that too extreme?
Sure. I think, I'll be frank. I haven't bumped into anyone at how do I word this sort of nicely? I'll start from. I'll go back.
Okay.
There's
a loaded question.
I don't think ATIP. I don't think Lou. I don't think Chris Mellon. I don't think any of the people with TTSA, sort of the members of the quote unquote invisible college. I don't think anybody knows what these pilots are bumping into.
Right.
I don't think the pilots know. I don't think so. And I don't think there's an organization or a project or a portfolio within.
can I cut you off real quick and just ask you this? Do you think there's a hypothesis?
Of course, there's a hypothesis. There's tons of hypotheses, right? I think they range from domestic test aircraft to foreign test aircraft. They go to drones. They go to various other potentially sensitive military technology from various countries. And I think obviously one of the hypotheses is otherworldly technology, right? Something that's not ours. But I mean like ours, like not human. Built by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So as well as other like natural phenomena, right? Like I'm sure they're like, there's like some weird like lightning or something we haven't discovered yet or whatever.
Right.
So,
right.
I think they have a lot. I don't think they've nailed down, what it is or isn't. And I think that's the problem. And I think the problem with the hypothetical situation is you're going to have potentially, let's say it's Lou. I'm sure he'd laugh at this whole conversation, but
he definitely did. He did.
And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna be the Nelson Mandela, and I'm gonna go to prison, or I'm gonna be that.
He was like, you're crazy.
I don't think Lou has enough information to walk out and say it's 100% this, because he would have to really provide some incredibly.
Well, I'm not saying he needs to say it's 100% this. All I'm saying is for example, he has had his own experience. He said that on the Unidentified season 2, and when they asked him what happened, he's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you." And I'm like, "Come on, dude! Like, I'm sorry. I love Lou Elizondo. He's the sweetest dude in the world. But you're asking us, at least at the time, this was, I don't know how long ago now that show's come out. But at the time, I was like, TTSA, if you're on Facebook, they're like asking for, investments, and they want your money. And it's just like, dude, if you're going to be part of an organization that is publicly traded, at least give us your UFO story. I think that's the least you can do, because look, I have a UFO story too. I painted it. It's the worst painting I've ever done in my life. Right there. Awful. It doesn't even look like what I saw. But I know, I saw that when I was 12 or 13 years old, and I can sit here as an adult and I can tell you this is what I saw. But even though that's what I saw, I don't know if that was military operated. I don't know. I have no idea what that thing was. And I can sit back and I can also say, a 37-year-old memory is, or a 32-year-old, or it would be 30-year-old memory would is going to change. The human brain changes stories and facts all the time. And so I can sit here, all these years later and go, hey, I'm open for it to be whatever I want, but at least I'm telling the story. I'm putting my vulnerabilities out there. I'm putting myself on the line to kind of look stupid, because people are going to look at, when you tell your UFO story, it's always with a, sure. Yeah, great. And it's like, all right, well, I don't care if you believe me or not. And I just wish he had a little bit more of that, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think, Lou's probably aware that he's a military guy, right? So for him, his entire portfolio for ATIP was a sort of side hustle within his real sort of job, right? So he's a counterintelligence guy, and his entire career at the Pentagon was predominantly dealing with foreign aircraft, right? So he was the guy they would call in, if they had, let's say, a satellite image of a some place in the Middle East or whatever, and they thought they had some weird drone, we don't know who it is, whose it is or whatever, and Lou would come in and he'd look at him like, yeah, no, that's actually, that's an Israeli Harpy drone. It's a loitering munition. The thing just dive bombs targets. And they would know, okay. And he would be the guy who they would call in to do that. He was a counterintelligence guy. It only made sense to hand him this sort of portfolio of like, listen, there's all these weird anomalous stuff flying around. Pilots are seeing, can you look at these pictures? Can you look at these videos? Can you look at the satellite imagery? Whatever we have, can you look at it and let us know? And, as Lou sort of was getting these things, be like, well, yeah, this is a Chinese drone. I know this one. This is an American. We know this is one of ours. Whatever. And then every once in a while, that one would pop in. It's like, I have no idea what the hell that thing is. Like, I've never seen that before, right? And then it would be attached to a report and what the thing did and whatever. And suddenly Lou kind of was getting this little stack inside his little portfolio of ATIP, of that weird stuff that that just didn't make sense if you took the pilot's report sort of at face value, if you took the photograph, and it was an accurate depiction of what the pilot said or whatever. And his stack kept growing and growing and growing and growing of these weird things that kept popping up. So I think for Lou, the problem is just because he had this weird stack of stuff, it now takes a sort of a leap of faith, right? What do I have here? Do I just not know what this is, and it's something perfectly normal or prosaic, or human, just not us, but somebody, some other country, or is it sort of otherworldly or whatever? And it requires a sort of, like I said, multiple hypotheses to get to a solution. And I think Lou is really pragmatic. I think he's going to be the kind of guy who's going to say, listen, I don't know, so I'm not going to jump into one idea or another. I'm going to kind of just leave it as we just don't know what it is. And I think Lou's kind of comfortable there. And I think that's where generally the UFO community, I think it needs to be. And I think that this is potentially one of the sort of the issues that the UFO community faces is there's this video or this picture, and automatically we jump with that into a hypothesis and we try to stick to it. And that's really, really tough, because what if a whole bunch of people have a whole bunch of other hypotheses? And now what happens, you get this kind of infighting, and then you get within that infighting and this chaos, you get charlatans who show up and they're like, oh, hey, I can actually play to this because it's really just a belief system. And you get little cults forming inside the UFO community and cliques and groups and invisible colleges who kind of buy into very similar ideas and they stick together. And so I think, to really long way around, the problem is nobody knows what we're dealing with, right? It could be, at the end of the day, a collection of the most boring things you've ever heard in your life, or it could be the most like spellbinding magical stuff you've ever heard in your life. But the problem is we just don't know. And I think we need to be really aware of that.
Well, I mean, I think if it was something as mundane as like a natural event, for example, ball lightning, I'd be totally okay with that. I'd be 100% okay with that. But I don't know if it would be pulling teeth with the DOD to get information on a natural phenomenon like that. I don't think they would be like, no, sorry, it's classified, we can't. I think something as natural and explainable as that, especially if they've seen it since the nuclear age, they would be able to sort of get science in on it and say, hey, what is this thing? We know it's not intelligently controlled or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I just wish some of these, again, I understand Lou's position. I get what Chris Mellon has done. I mean, he's the guy they sent when we lost a nuclear weapon. Like, these guys have very sensitive positions. But I do wish that, if they have personal experience, what's classified about that? I just wish they would be a little more open with that, just to give, that UFO community that's just constantly eating themselves, just something to be like, hey, look, like, this guy's not crazy. This guy's intelligent. This guy has credibility. This guy has a clear head on his shoulders. Like, and he's seen something. And the thing that he's seen is unexplainable. It's weird. Let's, at least that makes me, someone like me, feel a little more comfortable. But we move on.
I think maybe that was part of it in the beginning, but then when they came out, I mean, look what a lot of people said. They're disinformation agents. They're spooks from the government here to manipulate the UFO disclosure agenda. They're still active CIA spies, or they're part of the Illuminati, or they're satanic child trafficking assholes. Like, I mean, you had all of these conspiracies come out about them that were totally unfounded. But it's just, again, the UFO community at times engages in this kind of conspiratorial thinking, and it's sort of this lunacy that exists sometimes within certain circles or certain sort of belief systems, let's say, within the community. Not everybody, but a few. And they start yelling and they make a lot of noise, and all of a sudden you suddenly have a guy like Luke who's like, well, screw you guys, I'm not telling you my story. Like you think I'm a disinformation agent, you think I'm some spy or whatever, like, go to hell. And I don't blame you for that.
That makes sense. I totally understand that. It's look, I've got my like I told you earlier, I'm 40 years old, and the one thing that I have been sold from our government as an American citizen since the day I've been born is war. So Cold War, first Iraq War, second Iraq War, Afghanistan, The list goes on and on and on. We're now in Africa, parts of South America. Sure. And, you guys had just put out an article the other day about the Department of Defense, or excuse me, the Space Force being tripled in size in 2021. Yeah. So, and then it also in that article, it had referenced that, I'm going to make sure I get this right, that the NDAA estimated that to just start the Space Corps, and that's what it was called at the time, would be an estimated $696 billion. That is almost double the military budget that is operating today.
Right.
And that's not to get the Space Force off the ground and in space. That's just to start it. Yeah. So I'm very, very, very weary, especially when the program first name and iteration, at least as far as we know, was the aerial, the ATIC program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. That word threat was sort of a red flag for me. And because all of these wars are always sold as threats. Terrorists are sold as threats. If we don't take care of it, this threat is going to, be a big problem for us. And, this, before I ask the question, and then today we have an article that just released literally an hour before you came on the show about now the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force is sending a report to, and I want to make sure I have the order of this right. I wrote it down. So it's going from the Senate Intelligence Committee to, and they have the UAP task force has a report on UFOs, UAPs, AAVs, whatever acronym you want to throw at it. Sure. And that this report is going to go to the Senate Intelligence Committee. And then in the Senate Intelligence Committee, if they're all bipartisan and a green light, then that report goes to the Congress. Is that right?
Yeah, you're on the right track. Yep.
Okay. And then in Congress, if Congress is also on board with this report, then that report will go to the White House. And if the president is on board with releasing this information, then all of those departments, all of the DEA, DOD, sure. Navy, intelligence, yada, 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 if all of them can get on the same page and coordinate with this report, then that report, if the president approves it, whether it be Biden or Trump. And by the way, does Trump have an opportunity to fast track this quickly?
Okay, well, so in June of 2020, the Senate Intelligence Committee put into an intelligence sort of bill that they drafted that they wanted information about anomalous or advanced aerial vehicles making incursions into U.S. airspace. So that was in June, and basically what it needed to go through was a bunch of drafts and debates until it was put in front of the president yesterday, and President Trump signed it. Not just like the intelligence thing, but it was a massive sort of.
It was part of it. Was it part of the stimulus package?
Yeah.
It was just hidden in all of there. So he didn't go, oh, the UAP task force got a report, let me sign this. It was just part of the big stimulus bill.
Yeah, so you would have had a lot of individuals. You would have had a lot of players from the DoD to to the State Department to whatever, kind of putting a whole bunch of stuff into this giant sort of package that the president signed off on. One of the tiny little paragraphs or so, more than a paragraph, page or so, was about requesting information about sort of these advanced aerial vehicles. So we know that got signed yesterday, which means it's approved. So now the task force has 180 days to basically provide a report back to the Senate Intelligence Committee on its findings. So tell us what's going on. What do you know? What is sort of the situation, I guess, is really what the Senate Intelligence Committee wants. Excuse me, sorry to stop you, but the Senate Intelligence Committee has already gone through 2 reports that we know of. Well, I'm sure they would have received those 2 reports. Yeah. But now.
But probably, has there been any other reports that have been thrown in there in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee to sort of pressure the president to do this, or?
No, I don't think there was pressure to do this. I mean, because
Okay.
ultimately the pressure on the president to sign this bill yesterday was really COVID-19 and
Right.
ensuring that they had enough money to keep people going for the next 6 months to a year, economically.
More like 12 minutes, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure how
600
much you're
bucks
getting.
it's gonna fire up fast. But
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
not American. It's like, what is it, like
yeah.
$600 or something, or
It's
1,200
600.
bucks
Well, it's a $600 check, and then you get an additional $300 a week.
for how long?
I don't know yet. I
Okay.
don't know the length of that, but I'm assuming it's going to be around the same length as the first package, which was about, I think, 2 months.
Okay. So there you go. So that's really what pressured the president. Like there was
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident no one at the Senate Intelligence Committee kind of knocked on the door and was like, hey man,
Right.
there's a UFO thing in here. You got to sign it, and spend trillions of dollars on the COVID thing just to get that report.
Right.
No, I think it was. I think it sort of came down to a bunch of let's just say, edits and understandings within the DoD and maybe some other departments, and just kind of being like, we're just going to kind of jam it in there, and it's kind of hiding in there. But so ultimately, what's going to happen in 180 days? Senate Intelligence Committee is going to get a report, and where we sort of are left off, and the big question hanging over this whole situation is, how much of this report is going to be classified, and how much of this report is going to be unclassified and allowed for public sort of release.
Right.
So this is where we're at. I think a lot of people are basically thinking, this is it, baby. The UAP task force, they're going to put out a report, and it is going to be everything. It's going to be pictures and videos, and we're just going to get a massive data dump of UFO stuff, and we're going to be able to comb through it for the next 20 years, and it's going to be the best 20 years of UFOs ever.
Right.
And then I think there's the other side, which is like, yeah, listen, the UAP task force isn't looking for aliens, right? Like they're not interested really. Like there's nowhere kind of in their mentality that this is most likely aliens. They're really more worried about China having some hypersonic drone that they can't chase down. That's really the big concern. I think that there's people within the UAP task force who, again, just like Lou, have a stack of information that's like, this is weird. We've never seen this before. We don't know what this is, and it needs to be addressed. And I think that's sort of a little pile in sort of the broader pile of what the UAP task force really deals with. You can't see my hands. A broader pile of what UAP task force really deals with. So I think what's really going to happen is a lot of this stuff's going to be classified. There's going to be, listen, we're not going to tell the public about what potentially other countries have or what we're developing and what we're testing, because that's insane. It's national security. So I don't think really we're going to get anything, in all honesty. I'm at the point where I don't think we're going to get a single stitch of information, because the vast majority is going to be about literally drones and unmanned aerial systems and hypersonic systems.
So managing expectations, it's safe to say, is going to be key in this the next 180 days for sure.
Really, I think my advice would be temper your expectations and expect nothing.
Expect nothing.
I think that's what it's going to be. But the inherent problem, right, that's going to crop up is it's just like, well, there's not. It's all classified. It must be aliens. Must be conspiracy. It must be Roswell 2.0. And unfortunately, that's what happens, right? It could just very well be a report about Chinese and Russian drones, and that's it. That's what we know.
Well, the good thing is, though, is that at least it's public knowledge now. Like, there's a report. It's gone in front of a Senate Intelligence Committee. Some of that, and may, who knows? Maybe we get lucky. Maybe we get another. Oh, did we lose MJ? We lost MJ. Let's see if we can wait for him to come back. Well, first of all, thanks everybody who's joining the stream. Let me add MJ back. Sorry. It was. No, it's okay. I thought it was me. I was like, wait, what did I do? I was just thanking everybody, waiting for you to come back. So everyone who's joining us, thank you so much. It's been awesome. Definitely the most successful stream. I'm sure a lot to do with MJ and our guests. If you haven't already, subscribe, like, share, do all those wonderful things, because it helps a new channel, and we're growing. And hopefully we can have MJ back and some of his counterparts. I'm sorry.
I didn't leave on purpose. I accidentally.
No. That's okay.
Went away.
That's okay. What I was saying, I think something along the lines of, at least we're getting this report in public. And if we're lucky, maybe we get something leaked, like another photo or maybe some radar tracking information would be cool. Or because I think, and I've heard Alejandro Rojas say this, and I love his reporting. I love everything that guy does. He really just adds a lot of science to the conversation and a lot of just let's temper expectations. Let's be level-headed about this thing. Same thing with Martin Willis. You guys are just really great sources of information. But that made me lose my train of thought. Totally made me lose my train of thought thinking of them. Gosh. Anyway,
I can jump in here. I'll jump in here.
Please.
I'll follow your train of thought.
Yeah.
I think you're right in the sense that it's put out more public attention to sort of a very real situation that not a lot of people think about. And I think it's just the fact that we assume that the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines, whatever, are able to sort of control the airspace. We know that that's not necessarily the case now, right? We know that something is deciding to just willy-nilly rip through our airspace and can do it without being caught, can do it without being tracked, can do it without being shot at.
Can do it without slowing down.
Yeah, and ultimately what this means then is the airspace really isn't as controlled as we think, right? And I think that there's national security implications there. I think there's possible safety implications there when it comes to commercial flights or anything. So if the airspace and now potentially the underwater space, like the sea that is also within sort of the territory of the United States or the West or the Five Eyes or whatever you want to say, something is zipping around down there or up there. And it's not, and we're not aware of what it is. That's a problem. And I think the public sort of be more maybe cognizant of that. It's not fear mongering. It's just being aware of the situation. It's kind of breaking us out of this sort of secure bubble that we think we live in, and everything's great here because we have the best military in the world, and we're part of this great alliance with all these other countries who are kind of monitoring everything. Everything's just hunkered down and safe, and it's really not quite so clear cut. I'm not going to sit here and say it's aliens. I'm not going to sit here and say it's Chinese drones. I'm not going to sit here and say it's who knows, right? Some other some American test craft. All I'm going to say is something is there, right? This report in 180 days will at least provide some people with information as to what they believe that something is, as well as potentially some specific information that catalogs it. Whether we get it or not, that's a separate issue. I'd love to see it, but we need to sort of temper our expectations in the sense that this stuff could be pretty sensitive and it's not really fit for public consumption, because if you and I get it, that means a whole bunch of other countries are going to get it, and whether those countries are friendly or not is sort of up for debate. So that's part of it.
Well, it's safe. I mean, I get that. It's and I think what I was going to say is I don't think the best piece of evidence that we're going to get is going to be a photo or video. That's what Martin and Alejandro always say. Is that's what I've lost my train of thought on. But and I agree with that totally. But of course, videos and photos are way more click-worthy than some boring report on a radar tracking information. Okay, so we don't have a ton of time. So I guess I'll open it up. If anybody in the chat's got any questions, fire away. But I'm getting back to sort of the selling of war and sort of the drumming up of war. If this Senate intelligence report comes out, and let's just say, again, hypothetically, I'm just throwing hypotheticals out there because I like to just think about stuff like this. Because I'm a war hawk. I constantly, I think a lot of our problems domestically stem from the overextension of the foreign policy that we have. And when a $696 billion budget is put on the table, that makes me go, whoa, what? What's going on there? And this information that is being released, I think if, let's say a report, and we don't have to say it's going to be this Senate Intelligence Committee report, but let's just say in the next 10 years, a report does come out that in fact that these vehicles are not Chinese, they're not Antarctican, they're not Italian, they're not Russian. They are something, not made on this earth, quoting, people from the Senate Intelligence Committee. And, I think if you even give a sliver of that report to the public, that would be a very, very good way to get a $696 billion budget approved. If you could tell and show the American people, hey, this Space Force needs to be done, and it needs to be done right now. The only way I see the military getting an approval for a budget that large is to come out with some kind of information like this that is going to convince the American taxpayer to shell out. They already control 57% of the yearly budget goes to military spending. So you're talking about doubling that. Who's going to pay for it? Where's that money going to come from? I think there's a lot of questions start coming up if you just ask for it. But if you ask for it with some sensational video or something getting shot down or something, just something that convinces, again, the taxpayer that, yeah, this is a venture worth going after.
Maybe I'm not convinced. I mean, ultimately, I think they could probably do the same thing with, let's say, China, right? You could, when you look at a lot of the discourse surrounding the Space Force and surrounding the militarization of space, really the two bad guys that are sort of cited all the time is China and Russia, right?
Yeah.
I've read several articles now that China and Russia are both testing sort of these top secret satellites that suddenly issue a projectile and then they say, oh, it was like a probe or whatever. Meanwhile, the American sort of media says, well, maybe it is a probe, but if that thing was flying at a satellite, one of ours, it could take it out pretty easily. So there's a lot of.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think the Chinese government or the U.S. government, for that matter, has an object that has the capability of going through our ocean, traveling through our atmosphere, and then going into space, and then maybe even coming back. We've just figured out, and I was. For my buddies who believe in the alien bases underground at Mars and all of these crazy space programs that are conspiracy theories, I'm just like, where's the paper trail? Where's the budget? Where's the money? Where are they getting the money to build bases underground? And if you could point to Elon Musk and say, dude, it's taken him almost $1 trillion to figure out how to land a rocket by itself after using it to go up, we're barely scratching the surface of these kinds of things. So for you to just throw out this budget that just would be impossible to fund. But it scares me. It really, because again, just this, I don't know if this is part of my psyche, just all of the war that I've been sold. And again, just my personal beliefs, I think is really where this is coming from. It's just, do you guys, at the debrief, are you when you report things like this, is that in the back of your mind, like, hey, this could just be, because I think our government is a lot more intelligent than people give it credit for. I think they do have the capability of hiding things and covering things up. They've shown it over and over and over and over again. And, to think that they're like this, benevolent force and all in this story is, to me, it's silly. You shouldn't do that. These guys want a budget. They want money. They want toys. They want things to stealth toys and things, that I think they would kill for a machine that can go underwater and travel into space and come back and use very little fuel.
Yeah.
But
well, I think like I said, I don't think the Space Force, for example, needs aliens to justify its spending. I think it can easily sort of.
China's good enough.
Yeah, going to war with China would be a pretty compelling reason to spend $600 billion. And I think when you look at kind of their promotional videos on joining the Space Force and what sort of their mission is, right? They often talk about how, all communication, everything we do is basically governed by satellites in space. If a country decides, what they say in one of the videos, a projectile the size of a penny traveling at 17,000 kilometers an hour can easily disable a satellite.
Yeah.
Imagine if a country simply released 5 or 6 things that could release, dozens of these, you could knock out every single satellite, and suddenly the entire communication grid of the United States drops. Planes start falling out of the sky. I mean, you can really paint an apocalyptic picture
Sure.
with a foreign country that's developing a pretty.
Just me looking at China, I'm looking at China, I'm like, does China really have the gumption or the temerity to pull off a move like that? They don't. I mean, I know they're dangerous. I know we should definitely be keeping an eye on them. I just don't like when I think of China. I know their military's got an endless number of people. I just don't think that they've got the capability of getting on aircraft carriers and launching a full-fledged attack on the United States. And if they're taking out our satellites, like that's going to have a blowback effect that I don't think they're capable of defending. Like, I just don't think. I'm sure. I mean, they're number 2 in the world. They've got, but compared to us, I mean, what is their defense budget compared to the United States?
Yeah, listen, I'm not a defense expert, and I don't necessarily want to demonize China more than I already have. And
right. Well, that's why I always call it Antarctica.
So,
I always try to say Antarctica because they're the ultimate threat.
Yeah, listen, I'm Canadian as well, so I'm friends with everybody. I think. I think the problem, and I think that again, I have a history background, so no one expected the Spanish Inquisition. No one expects, right? No one it's tough to sit here and say, I expect this or I don't expect that, and then suddenly history kind of turns on a dime, and we've got countless examples where no one really expected, a certain ancient city-state to suddenly win a war, or no one expected a country that had been totally bankrupt to come back from that and then invade, most of Europe. Like nobody's really expecting stuff to occur sort of historically, and we're not very, very good at it. We've tried, not to invade Russia or try to, and people keep trying and they keep failing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just these things happen.
Same thing with Afghanistan. People have been trying to take over that piece of the world since the beginning of time.
So I think we bump into this thing, like, we can't necessarily see China being a potential enemy or whatever, and maybe not right now, and maybe not in the next decade, but maybe in 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows? And thinking forward and thinking ahead, you have to always kind of be prepared that history might surprise you. And I think that's just part of it.
Well, I definitely take, we've got 2 questions and then we'll end it after these 2 questions from the chat. But I just wanted to say quickly, I'm sure you're familiar with Lex Fridman and sort of the work that he's doing. I think he's a wonderful voice coming from MIT that is really championing the following of this topic and the disclosure of it specifically, because his theory is, well, why not inspire? Like if we had a propulsion system that defies all physics, why would you not share that? Why would you not want the youngest, most brilliant minds working on that, trying to figure out, how do we get into space? How do we become interstellar? How do we get into that type 1, type 2, type 3, civilizations, and is there a type 4 that now has been theorized? I think it's an inspirational topic. And I don't know, because, again, like you're an intelligent person, you have a lot of access to very, I wouldn't say important people, but people that just happen to have access to the stuff that we're interested in. And I think your work and everything you guys are doing it's just going to add to it. It's just going to, this is no longer like, we're no longer the crazy people in the room anymore. And if it kind of feels good, like when a photo like this leaks, or, and look, I'm not saying there's any validity to this, but when you have the Israeli father of the space program coming out and saying, yeah, these things are real. Not only that, there's a bunch of other stuff going on, you got John Brennan, former head of the CIA coming out. Like you've got, former Senate majority leader. Like this is coming. It's coming. When, where, how, what it's going to be, nobody knows the answer to that. But I'm glad you guys are sort of adding to the credibility of this, because I know I'm not crazy. I'm sure you think you're not crazy. This is not a crazy topic to talk about anymore. It's 2020, and UFOs aren't as taboo as they were 5 years ago. So
Sure.
it's a fun time. So, okay. So I've had you for an hour. I'm going to let you go. But before we do, I do have 2 quick questions to see if we can answer these quickly. This is the first one. Of course, everybody wants to know TTSA, the breakup, the band is broke. The Beatles are done. What do you think about it? Just quickly offhand. I know you guys at the Debrief are kind of sick of the Tom DeLonge and the rock star because he gets all the credit and you guys are doing all the work, like every time, well, I mean, at least when you were working for, Politico or any of these other, it's always like, hey, can you make because I remember Tim McMillan was saying, they always want you to make the title of the article very sensational and Tom DeLonge brings eyeballs. And it's always like, dude, I just did all this work and he kind of doesn't really have anything to do with this article. But what do you think? TTSA breakup. Sorry.
No problem. Listen, it was surprising when I heard that they were done. I had expected them to have maybe a longer shelf life than they had. 3 years. It's not even a full 3 years. It isn't very long. I don't think TTSA is dead. I think they are just going to pivot to maybe a different model. I think that doing real research and work in regards to studying, let's say, metamaterials or looking at UFO data and actually trying to extrapolate information from that is one, really expensive, and 2, not that exciting, and 3, doesn't really pay for itself in the short term, and potentially won't pay for itself in the long term either. It's a bit of a needle in a haystack situation, and I think ultimately what they realized was the only way we're going to kind of pay for all this is through the entertainment side. Right. But the problem is even the entertainment side doesn't always make that much money. You know what I mean? Unless you're making, unless you're Disney making the Avengers movies,
you better have a really big studio.
Yeah, you're not really making a lot of cash anyway. So I think it became, probably very expensive. And I think that a lot of focus was probably put on the entertainment side because that was trying to help pay the bills. And guys like maybe Lou and Chris Mellon and Steve Justice are like, well, listen, we want to do the actual research. We don't want to engage so much in sort of the media side of things. And it just kind of became, I think the realistic sort of situation dawned on them, and they were like, yeah, maybe we should just kind of go and part ways, and you do your thing, we'll do our thing, and then that's it. I think
it is what it is. I mean, you're not part of it. You can only sort of sit from the outside and sort of give your opinion on it. And, that's what basically all of this is. But okay, cool. I hope that answered your question. And we actually had a pretty funny question here. I don't. we'll sneak that one in there. So this is the second question for Mr. Banias. What is the next big scoop or project you and Mr. McMillan, Hanks, and everyone there is working on? I mean, you probably can't talk about this if it's the next big scoop, but I'd say the news that dropped today, definitely check that out. Read that article because there's a lot of cool stuff. I mean, we talked about it a lot here. MJ did a great job of going over that, but is there anything super exciting coming down the road that you're kind of giddy about?
There's always super exciting stuff coming down the road. I think we're gonna maybe see within the next, week or two, maybe some more information about sort of the predecessor of ATIP, which was the BAS run, Bigelow Aerospace run OSAP program. I think we'll get a little more information about that coming out within the next little bit. There's always cool stuff happening.
Well, I guess you just
gotta go to the website every day and check it out.
I tell you this, man. Check this out. I think you'll be pretty proud of this. I hope anyway. I don't know. It's not really that. On my favorites here, the Debrief is the very first thing we got. And I am constantly refreshing this page because it is, and I hope you guys don't mind over there, but you guys are like the source of my show. You're the content source for my show. I love going over your articles. I love going over everything you guys are putting out because I think it's really adding a lot of credibility to what we're talking about here. And then real quick, last question, I swear to God, on a different note, how does MJ feel about the Mandalorian finale? Baby Yoda and the Jedi.
Listen, it was
spoiler alert.
It was unexpected. Like I was watching with my wife, and we're
Yeah.
sitting there, and we're watching the, these things are punching through the door, and
Yeah.
I'm there being like, Baby Yoda's gonna do something, right? Like Baby
Yeah.
Yoda's gonna save the day. He's gonna force push this shit out of the
Yeah.
whatever, right? He's
Yeah.
just gonna find the power. And then to just have like this weird moment where like this X-wing pulls in, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what the? And then all of a sudden, like you see this guy swinging a lightsaber, like you're like, yep, it's happening. This is totally happening. And then it was terrific, man. Like
No, I loved it. I loved
it too. I have no
so
complaints about the end of the series.
No, I've got zero complaints too. I think it saved Star Wars. I was really distraught after that third movie about Star Wars, and I'm like, I don't know if they're ever going to be able to bring me back after this one. And then Favreau and Dave Filoni did it, man. I mean, when I saw that X-wing, I'm like, oh my god, it's Luke Skywalker. It's the only person it could be. I mean, who would pull up in an X-wing by themselves to this situation? Has to be Luke. And yeah, awesome. But when that green lightsaber came out, wow, man, that was like chills. I was like, oh my god, this is everything I wanted in Star Wars. So thank you, Rodrigo, for that question. Because as you can see, I think we both loved it. So okay, man. On that note, I'm gonna let you go. I swear to God, I could keep you here for 10 hours. But I'm not gonna do that on the first interview. But please come back. I would love to have you back on the show. I would love to pick all the boys over there at the Debrief if they have an open invitation to the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Anytime you guys want to come on, I'm down.
Sure. I'll let them know. I'll let them know that we have an invitation. Maybe we'll swing by one day.
Yeah. Tell them how many subscribers I have. Tell them I have 388. I am big.
Yeah.
Big.
You're killing it. And I hope I at least got you one or two. So we're okay.
You got me way more than that. Yeah, I was at 380 at the start of the day. I'm at 388, 387, 388. So yeah.
Yes.
Big time. Love it. I'll take it too, man. Well, dude, thank you. Cannot thank you enough. Please check out MJ's work over at the debrief.org. Make it one of your favorites as well. I highly recommend it because the information and the news that is constantly being pumped out of these guys is phenomenal. And it's also a great way to follow the money. I know one of you guys in here sort of tweeted this in the comments. They are constantly talking about budgets, which I'm a big geek about because I agree. I think if we follow the money, there might just be another avenue to answer some questions. But anyway, on that note, thank you so much for coming aboard, getting weird with me here, MJ, on the Unidentified Celebrity Review. Until next time, dude, we will see you all next time. Peace. Let's see. How do I...